You've heard of the console war, right? The console war is something that has been raging for years now, but an unlikely participant seems to be taking its place in front of the big three console makers. Let's take a look at the reasons why, and what that means for the future of video game consoles. I'm Max Neal, and this is Voxel. So let's set Nintendo to the side here for a second. Because of the big three console makers, Team Red seems to be the only one that's actually bucking trends. For years, consoles have controlled our living rooms. They've been the subject of sibling rivalries and the distraction we needed on that long-haul flight from the fact that the guy in the aisle seat insists on taking both armrests. Come on, dude. Consoles have been dominant in the core gaming market for a long time, and that makes sense. AAA gaming studios have poured billions and billions of dollars into producing console exclusives that you cannot play anywhere else. Consoles provide a platform for multiplayer gaming, socialization, and the showcasing of our greatest moments through our friends lists and our achievements, and they're the one device in the home that will never judge you based on your f***ed up browsing history. Historically, consoles are popular because they come ready to play out of the box with no setup needed. The quintessential console experience is getting home, turning it on, and hearing this for the first time. Compare that to your average gaming PC, where you get home, slice your hand open on the radiator grill, push a little bit too hard installing your RAM, close the thing up to power it on, only to get this to pop up, and then spend the next 20 minutes navigating forums and subreddits until you finally figure out that you added maybe a little bit too much thermal paste. Fact is, PC gaming had a sort of reputation for years as a hobby designed only for the people who chose that Commander Shepard should start off as a certified nerd. And while building your first PC was undoubtedly a rite of passage for many of us, it was about as rewarding for others as driving this thing. Today, though, things are completely different. Nearly all of us have our own computer, and even if yours looks like this, you're still bound to be able to play increasingly complex and interesting games on it. That's in big part thanks to indie gaming and game makers who are focusing on telling interesting stories on shoestring budgets. And the way that we control games on PC has changed dramatically in the last decade as well, as it's become more and more common for PC games to allow you to control them with a variety of control schemes. In a lot of ways, it feels like we're exiting the era of console dominance in the gaming market for these and for many more reasons we're going to explore. And it's having a major impact on the way that games get made and on the console experience as a whole. Console exclusives, the whole reason you bought a $360 Animal Crossing machine, are seemingly a thing of the past on Xbox and PlayStation. Windows PCs come with the Xbox app pre-installed, meaning you can access Microsoft's expanding library of first-party titles without needing a console at all. Plus, Microsoft's strategy seems to be releasing first-party titles on Game Pass with day-one parity across Xbox and PC, meaning you can get that $70 game for $15 a month. And if you're more of a rip off the heads of my enemies kind of gal, you only need to wait a few months to be able to play PlayStation exclusive games on your PC, with the recent exception being Helldivers 2, whose simultaneous release across PC and PlayStation was a massive success, one that I don't think many of us expected at all. But we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. Cross-platform multiplayer is something that we're starting to take for granted these days, and while it's having a positive impact on the number of players in multiplayer lobbies, it's actually having a major negative impact on the social environment on consoles. Where 10 years ago, players could assume that the people that they were teamed up with were gaming from the same platform, today, there's little guarantee that you could even add them as friends after a match together. There are also known disadvantages to playing on a console against PC players. So while cross-platform multiplayer might reduce queue times, it also might be aggravating the equation when players decide whether they should buy a PC or a console as their next platform of choice. And that gets to another major point of the division between PC and console gaming, and that's the ecosystem.
Parents flit beneath the verdant canopy.
Nope, not that ecosystem. I mean the platforms themselves. Xbox Live, PlayStation Network, Steam, and Steam's little brother, Epic. By the way, do we still hate the Epic Store, or have we finally grown out of beating up on it for liking the same games that we like? It's difficult to overstate the importance of gaming platforms like these because they carry a ton of power when it comes to our habits, our preferences, and the health of PC and console gaming communities as a whole. consoles still reign supreme when it comes to gaming on the big screen. And while options like the Steam Link and Steam Deck can technically bridge the gap between your living room and your Pone Palace, I can't believe those words just came out of my mouth, they are not without their downsides, namely that they don't work great with games that aren't native to Steam, or with shared screen multiplayer games that require multiple controllers. And we haven't really seen true innovation from the console market in years. Nintendo aside, with its brilliant control schemes and absolutely horny options on the Nintendo Store, seriously, Sony and Microsoft have been incredibly slow to the naughty gaming scene, and I don't know why, but I can get raunchier games on my family-friendly Nintendo Switch than I can on the console that brought us this. The closest thing we've gotten from Team Green are the scenes from the Halo TV show that no one ever asked for.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
And for that reason and others, it means that we interact with our consoles today in fundamentally the same way as we have for the last 2 or 3 generations. And that's despite the era where all of us were violently gyrating in front of our living room TVs. Is this it? Have we reached the limit to console innovation? I don't think so just yet. So let's take a deeper look at the elements facing gaming consoles today and what that might mean for the future of the games we love. Take a look at the box for the Xbox Series S. Shell out a few $100s for one of these puppies, and on the back, you'll find a promise that's made to you. Look at all the amazing games you'll gain access to. Look at all the worlds that you can explore. These are the promises made to me back when I came home with my first console, the N64. And back then, that promise was real. I really couldn't visit any of these places without my console, and without it, I certainly couldn't experience the mental crisis of how to hold that freaking controller with only 2 hands. If games are doorways into new worlds, then your game console has been the key to opening those doors. And this was made apparent right on the box itself. Now come back to the present and look again. All of these games are available to be played on Xbox, but the quiet part that Microsoft doesn't say out loud is that you can play almost every single one of these games on the PC that's in your home today. Microsoft and Sony have begun aggressive strategies to capture more of the PC gaming market by distributing what would have otherwise been console-exclusive titles that you would need to buy a console to play, and releasing them on PC as well. That's been working out pretty well for them. Take a look at PC Gamer's recent analysis of comments made by Matt Piscatella, a gaming industry analyst who confirmed that over half of Helldivers 2 sales were on PC in the United States. That means that for Helldivers 2 and for Sony, the game's publisher, if forced to choose, it would be more profitable for them to release the game as a PC exclusive than as a PlayStation exclusive. Or would it? Because while the sales of the game on PC were higher than that of the PlayStation, it comes with a big, massive, steamy caveat. It's pretty well known that if you want to buy games on PC, you buy them on Steam, which famously takes a 30% cut of all sales just for listing the game on the platform. This cut goes towards funding what is truly the backbone of PC gaming. It's where you get news and announcements about your favorite games, it's where your friends lists and community features and mods for games live, and it's where you can read enlightened commentary and reviews of games before buying them, like this helpful little nugget. Steam has what can only be described as a fanatical user base, with its own memes about and perhaps a true love for its CEO, Gabe Newell. And what, when first introduced in 2003, was despised by the gaming community at large because, frankly, it was different, has become the gaming mecca for PC gamers, most of whom couldn't care less about Steam's 30% take off the top of every game sold on the platform. But you know who does care? Publishers. And it's this reason why PC platforms like EA's Origin and Ubisoft's, is it Uplay? Uplay? Why these even exist when players repeatedly tell publishers, Bethesda don't. But many persist because when you own the distribution platform where your games get sold, you get to keep 100% of the sales for yourself. And publishers have known this for years. It's one of the core principles behind selling digital games in the first place. Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo no longer need to spend the money on the physicality of games, if instead they can make it easy and convenient enough for you to buy them digitally. Plus, digital games can't be resold on the secondhand market, which cuts just a tiny bit into corporate profits. But if these costs of manufacturing and distributing games around the world are removed from the equation, then they can sell games to you for cheaper, right? No. Not right. You think these companies are giving you a penny of the profit they're making from cutting out the middleman? To the moon? More like to the only reason we're still in business is because we're the corporate equivalent of a hand puppet if the fingers of the hand were instead each one of 5 30-year-old day traders. I love the physicality of games. I love physical stores. And yeah, I love GameStop and EB Games. I just wish the EB didn't stand for extinctive business. That's because digital distribution platforms are growing even bigger. And not only because publishers can save a quick buck, though there's even some question to that profitability given how both EA and Ubisoft make most of their games available on Steam anyway. But rather because these platforms themselves are a part of gaming culture. Platforms are where our friends lists and our achievements live, a fabled history of the hours, weeks, months, and years of our time spent in this hobby. And if you're anything like me, then they've become more than that. They've become habitual. And that's the ultimate goal of these platforms, because if when you boot up your PC, the first thing you do is to go check Steam, there's an opportunity for publishers to make direct contact with you, maybe even show you a cheeky little targeted advertisement beamed straight into your eye holes. It's the same reason that despite buying the games on Steam, you still need to load Ubisoft and EA games through Uplay or Origin. And even after closing the game, these platforms stay on. And they may even be watching and learning about you, as was the case with Overwolf, which for years was tracking what game users were playing on their PCs and then selling that data to advertising and consulting companies. Overwolf has since stopped selling that kind of data in the name of privacy concerns, and good. But it underlines the fact that the console war isn't a battle between which aesthetic you like more, mini-fridgism or Seto Kaiba chic. It's a battle between platforms. Who owns them and who owns you? You might have heard about the debacle between Sony and Helldivers 2 players over Sony's insistence in forcing players to create and use the PlayStation Network if they wanted to continue to play the game. I went into detail about this on the DLC podcast. If you want to know more, I'll have a link in the description. And boy, if you thought people were upset about the Epic Game Store simply existing, then you ain't seen nothing yet, because Helldivers 2 went from PC gaming's beloved daughter born from innocence and passion to its red-headed stepchild. Negative reviews of the game flooded in from gamers who couldn't understand why Sony would make them do something as terrible as spend 2 minutes creating a PlayStation Network account and linking it to Steam. It's not because Sony hates Greenland or the entire continent of Africa, but rather because Sony likely sees a strategic interest in building its own platform now across PC. Xbox has a huge lead on Sony when it comes to the PC market by nature that its daddy Microsoft also happens to distribute, I don't know, the most commonly used operating system on the planet. And so even if you don't know that Game Pass costs only $1 for your first month and gives you access to hundreds of incredible games and day one first-party releases across Xbox and PC, then most of us are only one click away from being able to learn that. And unless Sony starts embedding subliminal advertisements in its new line of home appliances, then they are significantly behind the curve. And so while Phil Spencer famously said that Xbox lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games, I would argue that Xbox is winning in this next generation of gaming, where console makers stop being console makers and start being obnoxious pop-up notifiers on your desktop. Where all of this comes from is that companies like Microsoft and Sony have shifted their focus away from their promise to players that their consoles are keys to new worlds, and instead toward the promise to investors that the line will continue to go up. We see it in how publishers are taking fewer and fewer risks in gaming. We see it in how publishers are gobbling up studios in order to reduce their competition. And we see it in how those same studios are being shuttered by publishers left and right. When was the last time we got an amazing, culturally relevant first-party title from an Xbox studio? Oh, so they were rewarded for the game's success and given the means to create a sequel, right? Oh God. What we're seeing is a constant doublespeak in gaming, as publishers and console makers are torn between investor interests and player interests. In the same breath, Microsoft says it needs games like Hi-Fi Rush the day after killing its studio. Then Sony explains its strategy to release games on PC in hopes that they entice PC players to buy a PlayStation to play the sequels days before releasing God of War Ragnarok, the sequel to God of War, on Steam. These companies are saying one thing and they're doing another, and maybe that's gaining the trust of investors, grubbily rubbing their hands together while the gaming industry burns to the ground in the name of corporate profits, but it's playing a large part in how these companies are losing trust in their lifelong fans. For players to show dedication or even loyalty to a gaming platform, you have to show them that you care about them. Or if you don't care about them, you have to at least lie about it, and lie well. And let me just be straight. Okay, let's be honest, a little bit bi-curious. If you're a PC gamer laughing at Xbox and PlayStation players as they watch their favorite platform die in front of them, then you're just part of the problem, affecting all of us. And if you're an Xbox or a PlayStation player who delights in watching the other team take L after L due to the decisions of out-of-touch companies, then you might want to think twice about pointing the finger and laughing, because it's happening to you too. Underlying the whole console war is the sad reality that its soldiers are fighting to defend multi-billion-dollar corporations that have proven decision after decision after yes decision that they don't give a damn about your experience if it doesn't earn them an extra dollar. If you think that's a pretty cynical take, well, you're right. And it's important to remember that there are people working at Microsoft and Sony who put their love and their passion into making these platforms the best they can be. But don't be surprised to hear that they work every day with the thought that they might be the next department or the next studio to get cut. So, what does this all mean for the game consoles themselves? Well, there's been a lot of discourse around the future of Xbox and PlayStation. Consoles are loss leaders, and it's said that while the consoles themselves aren't profitable, they're designed to capture player interest so that players buy games and microtransactions on that platform. But even just the first part, that consoles don't make money, represents a major red flag for companies that are growing increasingly aversive to risk and cost. And so, what's the better alternative than shifting their strategy to PC? All the signs are there that say that a PC-first approach might be the future for Microsoft and Sony. We've already seen the fading identity of the Xbox gamer and the PlayStation gamer as console exclusives have gone non-exclusive. If this keeps up, we might even see the total death of consoles as we know them in the next 10 to 20 years. Assuming they stick around for a while though, one thing is certain. Console gaming is starting to lose its identity, and I see that, despite the console war, as a real loss. By nature, humans are tribal people. We seek others with the same hobbies and habits and shared understanding, and this makes us feel like part of the same tribe. It might sound overly poetic, sorry, I was a drama kid growing up, but it applies even to the world of video games. If you're an Xbox player, you were probably once defined by games like Halo or Gears of War, or beating anthropomorphic pinata creatures to death in front of their families. And if you're a PlayStation player, you were probably once defined by Final Fantasy or Horizon Zero Dawn, or beating mythological creatures to death in front of their families. But as exclusives start to fade into non-existence, it brings up an important and unanswered question. What will it mean to be an Xbox or a PlayStation player? If you thought it was bad when your parents called it a Nintendo, the next generation of kids will be asking, Mom, can we get the new Xbox? Mom will say, we have the Xbox at home, and this is the Xbox at home. Don't get me wrong, greater access to games is wonderful, but it may be coming at the cost of what many consider to be a second home to them. Now, that sounds pretty doom and gloom, but there's actually one good thing that we might see come out of this, and that Xbox is actually the closest to achieving. Assuming that consoles don't disappear completely in the next 10 to 20 years, we might actually see an agnostic console, one that unifies Xbox, PlayStation, and PC platforms. Think about it, these consoles and PCs all run on very similar hardware. This console could combine our friends lists and our achievements and become a real social platform that links these things. Things that, if you're on PC or on console these days, you may have already done when you link your Steam account to your PlayStation Network account or to your Xbox account. This console might even provide a connected metaverse that connects these places in a single location, something that has never been done before. And this hypothetical console might actually play a unifying role in the gaming community, and that is something that is sorely needed, because warring with each other over which of these two pieces of technology is superior to the other doesn't really make much sense, because we all just want the same thing as one another. We want to play great games and amazing experiences. We want to access a social network that understands us and plays the same games as us. And we all want to be able to play saucy games on our living room TV. Someone would just have to create some kind of one-handed controller. Oh, you know, that makes a lot of sense now.